So I did this review on how emotions are made last time, and it was my first one. I got some really nice feedback, also some feedback saying that I could kind of wrap it up a little bit more and look at the use of it for us, because that's kind of why we read books, isn't it? Because we want to use them, we want to sort of gather information from them and develop our business and ourselves in it. And that was a tough one for me. I started purposely with a really difficult book, How Emotions Are Made, and I did do a Facebook Live on my Facebook page, which is Steve Faulkner, speaker, trainer, coach. Have a look at that, and if you could like that, that'd be great. And I did some sort of Facebook Lives on trying to work out and learn in real time how to use the stuff. So I'm going to do a simpler one for me this time. I suppose simpler because I teach a lot of stuff out of it, kind of in an unofficial way, because I think we all do if we're trainers. And I think it may be one of the best personal self and business development books there is, and that's Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I'm going to just run through the what's in it at the moment, but just to start off with, my introduction to this book was years and years ago. I was doing magic at a conference in Birmingham, properly years ago, and this guy lent me a book. It was actually a book called by Michael Heppel called How to Be Brilliant. My first sort of personal development book I'd ever learned. I was saying to him I want to start to learning how to run a business, and I didn't have the first clue about it. I was a street performer. I was just starting to do professional bookings, and he gave me this book and he said also read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I sort of devoured this thing that started getting me, maybe I don't have to think about things this way, maybe actually I could be a business person without being a stereotypical business person. And when I read this really turned things around for me. And part of it was the productivity part of it and the responsibility. I was sitting at home at the time. I just moved to Sheffield, and I was bitching and moaning about the fact that agents weren't getting me any work. And then I started reading this about productivity, and then this whole thing about actually stop relying on people, stop complaining. I had what was equivalent to a really nice car to sell in the garage, but without opening the door and telling anybody it was for sale. And that was kind of what was happening to me. And I thought, forget the agents. Yes, it's great that they're there, but you've got to get out and get your own work. And that really started turning things around for me. So, and since then, and that was 15 years ago, and since then, this has been a book that I go back to again and again and again and again. So I'm just going to run through, if you don't know the basics, even if you do, I think it's worth looking at them. Habit 1 from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is be proactive. Now, a lot of us talk about proactivity, and it is a very used word, but he looks at it in a slightly different way. Obviously, there's all the stuff about being at cause and being completely responsible for your situation and owning that responsibility, but also this circle of concern and circle of influence thing, where you kind of work out what is under your control, what you can influence, and practice only trying to influence those things. And I talk about this in my videos a lot about stoicism. It's like, stop worrying about stuff you can't do anything about. Accept it. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Be concerned, but don't put all your energy into that, because you can't be proactive unless if you're putting your energy into things you can't do anything about. It doesn't leave enough space to actually put the time into the things you can control. So we end up sort of, those people that complain all the time about things they can't do anything about tend not to be listened to, and it goes into that, which is really powerful stuff. Begin with the end in mind is good old goal setting. Know where you're going to go. Understand, if imagine what you'd like people to say at your funeral. Sounds a bit depressing, but not really. Like, what would you like a friend to say about you? What would you like your spouse to say about you? Husband and wife, what would you like your family to say about you? And kind of always trying to live with those values, really, and know where you're going, and making that plan, and not really a specific one necessarily all the time, but just kind of have an idea every now and then, check back in with, actually, why am I doing what I'm doing, and do I still want this? Put first things first. Brilliant, easy for me to say. It's the Eisenhower principle. He goes through urgent, not important. This was my introduction to it, and I obsess over this stuff, and I teach it all the time. Think win-win. This is a great one. I always thought the idea of win-win was always in a business kind of interaction and negotiation, but the idea of thinking win-win, not just doing win-win, but in every situation, thinking, is this a mutually beneficial thing, or am I trying to get one over on people, or are they trying to get one over on me, or when is that appropriate? When is a win-lose or a lose-win okay? And it goes into that, of course. Seek first to understand, and then to be understood. I can't be bothered to write the whole thing. is the importance, another obsession of mine, of listening. Listening. The old thing of you got two ears and one mouth for a reason. All of these things, this one especially, I think in leadership, if you can nail this, you will be so much more influential, not manipulative, that's a different thing, but influential, meaning you will be able to teach, you'll be able to coach, people will listen to you, and people will be on board with where you want to take them. Synergize is the importance of things like meetings and getting together and partnering with people, and understand that 1 and 1 doesn't make 2, it makes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can create so much more as a group with the right people, with the right team development, and that's why teams exist, right? And sharpen the saw is this overarching thing of you can't do any of this stuff unless you look after yourself. And the original story goes, he's walking through the forest and he sees a guy sort of sawing down trees with like an old school, non-electric saw, and he's really struggling, and he says to him, what are you doing, mate? You look, you need to sharpen a saw, it looks really blunt. He goes, I can't sharpen a saw, I've got all these trees to cut down. And it's the idea of like not stopping and looking after the goose that lays the golden egg, right? So we have to sort of look after our health, look after our spiritual side, and I mean that not in a religious or not, that might be your thing, but just in the kind of your values, your happiness, the things that mean a lot to you, and obviously the mental and physical as well, and the legacy and all that kind of stuff that actually starts running things a lot more. I think that's what runs the engine the older we get, and is what arguably is what is running organizations these days, is more of a values thing and a healthy thing. So that's kind of the habits. But I think nearly every business book touches on this stuff, and most of leadership work does, really. I did a leadership day the other day, and at the end I just kind of had this idea of writing all these down. I've got everything we do kind of fits into these. It's not like I'm teaching stuff out of the book, but it's all about outcomes, flexibility, proactivity. That is, if you had a team full of people that were kind of living by these rules, or not rules but sort of approaches, then your job as a leader is so much easier. So in recruitment, if you're looking for this stuff in recruitment, you're going to get the right people on the bus. Now, the book itself is, some people say it's a dry read. I think it's a pretty good read, and it's a bit righteous. Some of it's a bit dated. It gets a bit religious sometimes for me, and there's all stuff about them as a family, looking at their family mission statement and all that. But if you can look through all that, it's got some really, really powerful stuff and some great stories, some very moving stories. And I actually think Stephen Covey was a good speaker. Some people say he was a bit dry. I thought he was a very good speaker. Legacy-wise, I think it's weird. I went on a Covey course a while ago, and it was good, but I think a little bit overpriced for what it was. Lots of videos of watching Stephen Covey, etc. And I think, again, that's not a bad thing. He's a very powerful presence. Obviously, he's not with us anymore, but I think there's so much more that could be done with this. And I think that the potential of people taking this on and really studying it on a deep level, like that Stoic thing of not just reading, hey, I'll do that, but what does it mean deeply to you, is really, really interesting. The audio book's okay; it's a little bit dry and it goes on for ages. So I would suggest a book, as a reference, and as just a kind of a way to live your life without being too dogmatic about it. I think that can be quite dangerous. But there you go, a little rundown of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You'll recognise this in so much stuff. I think so many books now are pretty much the 7 Habits rebranded. There are a lot of other books published. I don't think a lot of them feel a bit too kind of, I don't know, like they've been made just to bring more money in. This, to me, is it. There is one called First Things First, which is basically looking at habit free. That's a really good one as well, but a lot of the other stuff not so great for me. But there it is. So any questions, please do let me know. Any comments, any feedback, if you think this is too long, or you think I've got to slow down talking, which is always my thing, but that's just how I am. I'll try. But or any requests, any books that you haven't read that you wonder if I've read that I could give some insight in. It's only my opinion, but I think it starts a really interesting conversation, because these, for me, these bookshelves are really what drives and inspires me, other than the people that do. So have a great one, and have a brilliant weekend. Take care.